All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to Hudson Institute in this August, September afternoon. So my name is Miles Yu. I'm the Senior Fellow and the Director of the China Center here at the Hudson Institute. And today we have a topic that's very, very important for not only Taiwan, but also for the United States, in the larger sense for the world, because it deals with the particular type of warfare in the 21st century, in the age of artificial intelligence. So, the content will focus on key elements of China's hybridized warfare against strategy and coercive operations aimed at infiltrating Taiwan through a whole-of-society approach. As we all know, China's evolving hybrid warfare strategy is a key aspect of its campaign to undermine Taiwan's resilience and discourage American involvement in the island's security. On top of conventional military threats, Beijing uses disinformation, economic leverage, and legal warfare tactics to coerce and diplomatically isolate Taiwan. In the event of a crisis, China will likely intensify its use of these tactics to harm the United States military's readiness and undermine support for intervention among the American populace. To meet this challenge, the United States and allies must work to raise awareness of Beijing's unconventional playbook and enact collaborative measures to bolster Taiwan's defenses and strengthen deterrence in the Indo-Pacific. With that, I'd like to take a moment to introduce our guest this afternoon. First, Mr. Sampu, who's sitting right in front of me. He's the founder and president of the Taiwan-Hong Kong Association, a nonprofit organization of Hong Kong expatriates and pro-democracy advocates living in Taiwan, dedicated to supporting Hong Kong people who have relocated to Taiwan following the 2020 national security law and raised awareness of the political situation in Hong Kong. As the president of the THKA, Mr. Sampu continues to be an active voice against the actions of the Hong Kong and the Beijing governments. The group's work has been the target of accusations from Beijing, which claims that such organizations are politically manipulating Hong Kong's affairs. Our next guest today is Mr. Kai-Jie Xu. Mr. Xu is a judge at the Taipei District Court, specializing in national security and espionage cases. He was a visiting scholar at the NYU's US-Asia Law Institute and a visiting fellow at the Global Taiwan Institute in Washington, D.C. His research focuses on legal warfare, including hybrid conflict and strengthening Taiwan's legal resilience against foreign interferences. The agenda of this afternoon will begin with the keynotes from each of our guests, and followed by a panel discussion and, time permitting, questions from our audience. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the podium our first keynote speaker, Mr. Sampu.
Just 1 minute up. Yes, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sampu. I'm a lawyer and also a political commentator, a YouTuber, and also a part-time professor in university in Taiwan. So I'm concerned about the Taiwan situation as well as the Hong Kong situation vis-a-vis PRC or CCP infiltration, corrosion, and even crackdown upon Hong Kong. So what lessons can be shared to Americans and what America can learn from this is of utmost importance. In my own view, CCP infiltration and corrosion is not just happening to a nearby region. It is something happening to the whole world. And what we can see is if America do not want to anti-CCP, and this will be a very great detriment to this country, and also not just anti-CCP, but anti-communism itself and all forms of communist ideas. I think that's the key to protect the integrity of this sovereign nation and this brilliant tradition. In my own view, I think back in my years in Hong Kong, I was educated in Hong Kong for primary schools and secondary schools, and I studied in Taiwan. All through these years, when I came back to Hong Kong to practice as an international commercial lawyer, I witnessed a lot of things happening in China and also in Hong Kong. Hong Kong's decline is not by one day, but also is bit by infiltration and corrosion. What you can see is, if Americans want to know about CCP, study Hong Kong, study Taiwan, also study China. How they think things all through together, that's very important. For the things that we will see is, the mindset of CCP is a kind of simulation between communism and extreme nationalism. Have a 天下主义. They think that the whole world is governed by himself. So they want to, from the very start, the very important question asked by Mao Zedong is about what's the first question of revolution. The first question of revolution is to distinguish who are your friends, who are your enemies. So in terms of communist ideas, try to imitate, try to stand in the shoes of a communist. Think about how they view the world. They view the world in this way. There are three types of people: I, friends, enemies. Okay? There are only three types of people. And in terms of friends, that is how we work along the united front altogether. How? By blue, gold, yellow, passion and cognition change. Blue means this is kind of a blue ocean to spread the ideas, to attack your ideas. When you support one candidate over the other, they will all stand in the other things to polarize the whole thing. Gold means they use money to buy your support. Yellow, that means use your scandal, sexual scandal, to buy your support. And then passion. In Taiwan, many old soldiers, after they have retired, KMT is not in power. DDP would not care about them. And then when some CCP people from Xiamen show him a photo taken back in the 1940s in the Guogong Neizan, in the Civil War of China, oh, they are so crying all through the year, to the tears, and they think that they are so touched by CCP care. This is not a fake-up story. There are many stories like this that you don't need money. You don't need some scandals. You don't need other things. You can just use passion and also some echoing in their mind to take away the hearts of the people. So this is the United Front work. There are lots of ways to do this kind of simulation. Use all the attributes in your own humanity, good and bad, to achieve their own goal. They are not just gangsters. They are using this way to buy the hearts, buy the support of the people in Hong Kong and some in Taiwan. Hong Kong is a lost city, but Taiwan is not. Taiwan is a sovereign country. So what we can see is, if we can stand up on our own feet and fight for our own sovereignty, there will still be future. In terms of enemies, you will see that democracies all over the world are their enemies. They will segregate enemies into different layers. For example, EU as someone between United Front, friends, and enemies. They can struggle between them. But for America, they will say this full-blown enemy. So this is fundamentally different from PLC. And they would like to eliminate, to wipe out any enemy in the world. They will create enemy all over different different years. Somehow, this is your enemy. When this is eliminated, this will find some friends to become enemies. And then I think the key is I. What is CCP itself? I would say there will be three types of people. One is red, really red, like Xi Jinping, like all the CCP officials. One is gray, that is some, we say, underground parties. and there are underground parties in Taiwan. And so you count on yourselves how you see where there are underground parties in the US as well. I would see that underground parties have a very nice cover. When I was a lawyer in Baker McKenzie back in the turn of this century, 2002, I worked in the Hong Kong office. Somehow I traveled to Beijing office of Baker McKenzie. You know, every partner has a secretary sitting in front of their rooms, okay? And these secretaries are all CCP members. They are all beautiful young women. And I asked them how the CCP will organize you to really do their own job. And these youngsters will tell me one thing. Every 1 or 2 weeks, they will report what has been happening in this law firm to their own meetings. So every gossip, every kind of meeting, these secretaries has a collection kind of obligation to report to the CCP things that they will do. Of course, these are CCP members, but they will say, I'm CCP member, I can do the thing. So these are both red and gray. They are CCP members, they admit it, but there are some who do not admit it. And they are compelled not to admit it ever since the start. In Hong Kong, there are so many people practicing as teachers. They are CCP members, but they will not admit that they are CCP members, like the former CE, who is called C.Y. Leung, is one of them, and it's very clear from the start. And there are some who are very hidden, very in a dark space. It's not red, it's not gray, it's dark, like those happening in some important positions as assistants. In Taiwan, I think beside President Tsai or President Lai, there have been a lot of people who are helping to safeguard their interests, and some of them are really bought up by the CCP, and this is a red signal for Taiwan as well. So in terms of Taiwan, what kind of corrosion or infiltration they have? I would say PEMST, PEMST. P stands for politics, E stands for economy, media, schools, and temples. And these are the 5 important areas that CCP will touch upon, first in Hong Kong, and has been done in Hong Kong in the past, and now in Taiwan in full blown. Like in politics, you will see that the 3 major political parties are vulnerable to infiltration and corrosion by different factions of CCP in an underground manner. And somehow, they will see that they have some behavior that is really outraged, okay? In the past, I think in the Chiang Kai-shek or even Jiang Jingguo's era, many people will say, if you support CCP, you'll be vulnerable to being imprisoned or even life imprisonment or even death penalty, right? Of course, that's not a very, very full-blown rule of law era. But nowadays, many people will speak upon CCP as good. Many legislators, quite a few legislators speak upon CCP as a party that can be cooperated. But CCP has a mission in its own blood to really be the champion of the whole world, okay? When we see left and right, what we see left is always human-centric. They are human-centric and always kind of chaos. They believe the universe operates in a chaotic stage. And the right people, and even back in the American tradition, we'll see that it's God-based. And also there's an ethos into the things. This is the fundamental ideological difference between communism and also what the tradition here in America is. And I'm very glad I was educated in a Catholic school in Hong Kong and later studied in Taiwan and the States, which I know very well that this is a very important issue we should bear in mind, not to go too far towards the human-centric, chaotic kind of ideology. And the CCP will always broadcast something that in Chinese they say 人死如灯灭, which means that when a man dies, then the body will really vanish and everything is gone, okay? Like a light will be dimmed and that's it. And this is something they see through the life. They will do whatever they can during their life to strive for their own enjoyment and their own prestige. And this is something that is really bad for people who have faith in God. And politics is one thing. Economy is is alarming, because nowadays many businessmen, okay, even many farmers are really friends of the CCP, and then they will see that, oh, all my mangoes can be shipped to mainland, to Xiamen, and the CCP will dump everything into the ocean. I'll just pay you the money, pay you a good price, and to get you the heart when there's election and when there is organizational restructuring. Media, that's really alarming. I operated a social media, but I see there are so many fake news, okay? I think many people here operated social media as well. And I see that in Taiwan, nearly half, and actually more than half, of the mainstream media are operated by CCP-backed funding, and even CCP kind of controlled kind of ways of doing things. This makes me drawing the influence with Ukraine, okay? Of course, Ukraine and Taiwan are two different countries. We cannot compare very easily. But in terms of infiltration, one by Russia, one by CCP, you will see that they are very similar in that kind of sphere. And you think about how it happens in America as well. So I think what I need is not for America to protect Taiwan all the way, but to think through what America can do to really counteract against such CCP infiltration in the country. And schools, there are so many schools in Taiwan. Recently, there's a recent case. There's a top high school in Taiwan called Jianguo Zhongxue. And this top school has an organization. They raise up the flag of the USSR, like there's a 斧头, 镰刀. These are the knife and also the weapon. Using this as the symbol to organize among themselves. And that's not the only high school. There are tens of such schools in Taiwan at the same time. So you know what? When I talk about this, many people will regard this as freedom of expression, freedom of speech. But I tell them, look upon the Czech Republic. They have promulgated new law starting from the 1st of January 2026, next year, saying that any raising of the flags of Nazis or communists will be vulnerable to imprisonment of up to 2 years. This is something that we need to be very alertive about all these things. In Taiwan, people are very lenient on all these things and think that people can be left and right, so let them fly. But the point is, if and only if there is organizational hooking or some organizational linkage with the CCP indirectly, then there's a very alarming signal for Taiwan and many countries in the world to talk about. This is not something to be funny about, but it's something that is really serious. And temples in the Taiwan, I think in the Christians, I think besides the Presbyterian Church, I think many churches are vulnerable to not talking about politics. They are apolitical, and they will think that politics is away from them. I always talk to them saying that there is separation between the state and the church, and there will be no separation between religion and politics. Politics will fall under your faith to decide what is right and wrong, what is good and bad. You cannot hide away from it. You cannot be concealing yourself against it. So the thing is, the Christian community in Taiwan, many of them, except a few churches, local and really hardcore churches, they are not really standing up to fight for the justice and also to care about the needy. And in terms of Gongmiao is some temples like Taoist and Buddhist and local religious beliefs in all over Taiwan. They are like the city centers of every township. These temples are vulnerable by being bribed by Chinese officials. And when there's election, these temples will be the engines of igniting to support whom and to vote for whom. And also, there will be always bus tours and also cheap tours, more lower than cost tours to China to get you have good food, good bed, and even good women in some cases. So there are a lot of bribes and being bribed going on. What we can see is this situation has been going on in Hong Kong in the past and is now the present continuous tense for Taiwan. So what can be done? It's hard to tell, but I can tell you is that America is not here to help Taiwan to solve all these problems. All these problems are here to be solved by Taiwanese themselves in the first place. The key is, would these problems be similarly happening in this United States of America? That's the fundamental question you need to ask yourselves. I'm not an expert in America in all these aspects, but I think that is an alarm or also a kind of precaution note for all of you to understand. This is very important to understand. The other thing that we will talk about is for Hong Kong situation. I would say it is bad, and the autonomy is now lost. I will not be flying back there. My family is now all in Taiwan, and I know many of my companions, even like Jimmy Lai, has been in prison for a long time. It is good to make sure that US can use the correct leverage to really secure his full and unconditional release. And beside that, I would say that Jimmy Lai in the Hong Kongers' heart is similar to what I see nowadays, what we say we have condolences and tributes to Charlie Kirk. If Jimmy Lai dies in prison in the foreseeable future, I think he will rise up as something as an eternity among the Hong Kongers' heart. I don't know whether it's inevitable, but I think something can be done to really to avoid this situation from happening. Also raise the magnitude and coverage of sanctions by the US upon Hong Kong. And also, I think there are a lot of representatives and senators supporting the passage of the HKETA Certification Act. And also, transnational repression is happening here. Many of you in this forum may be in America, and I think that people are afraid of going to China. Many of us having been coming from Taiwan, so we will see, okay, there's no way that we will go into China because they have blacklisted every one of us. I would say the repression is harsh. And many bookstores, many singers in Hong Kong are now tightly scrutinized. They cannot sing, they cannot express in social media. If they do, they'll be asked by the police to talk about things. And it is like what happened in the Cold War. If you compare USSR and CCP, I will see that there's a fundamental difference. In USSR, there's still a religious groundstone, okay, that they will not go far too beyond. Of course, they have gone far too beyond in many cases, but I think that they have some sort of baseline. You will see that the culture and the fundamental heritage of Russia has not fully gone away. But CCP has demolished Chinese tradition to a largest extent. There are many good attributes of the Chinese tradition, like you need to be kind, you need to be respectful, you need to be faithful to something in the almighty sky. All these things have gone away, and they do not think that is important. And nowadays, CCP China, the Red China, is more difficult to be tackled in terms of ideology, because they have a very, very strong ideology that is talked about. Their main aim is to conquer the world in a subtle and also incremental manner. And this is something that the US needs to be very aware of this. I will say if the US lost its attention about the CCP issue, it will be vulnerable to super attack. If you ask me, who is the biggest enemy of US, I would say CCP. As someone has said just in this morning, that CCP is not just a strategic rival of America. It is not just an economic rival of America. It is a systematic rival of America. And if we do not really be understandable on this point, and then think, oh, Hong Kong is far away on the other side of the sea, Taiwan is all on the other side of the Pacific Ocean, that's too far away from the US, that's nothing related to us, I think is wrong. Because it is not about physical, kind of geographical distance. It's about ideological similarities. And if in America, you think that anti-CCP is enough, I would say it's wrong. It's anti-communist ideas and also false socialist dreams, okay? Either from class struggle to environmentalism struggle to race struggle to gender struggle. These are all fault lines in America that one by one, they cut the societies into factions. And they make use of this to divide I, friends, enemies, and to disseminate one after the other. This is something that they use this diffusion method all through these years. So we need to be very careful to see through these changes. So I think my time is up. So thank you very much for today. Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a privilege for me to speak here at Hudson Institute under the guidance of Dr. Miles Yu. Today, I'm talking about Taiwan, a society on the front line between democracy and the authoritarian region. And my message is simple. Taiwan is both a learner and contributors on the global defense of democracy. And when I talk about the policy, I want to provide the first basic question. That is, how serious the CCP's infiltration nowadays in Taiwan? I always use the metaphor, which is like a vacuum cleaner, sucking up almost everything, including the large and the small. For example, in 2022, there's 28 people prosecuted by international law, and only 2 years later, almost 170. It's like a 6 times increase. So let me explain why. I have 3 reasons to explain this condition. The first is for the change of the platform after pandemic. In the past, espionage activity always rely on face-to-face meetings to verify identity. However, the CCP have the new tactic, which is they realize they only use the small advertising on internet, such as Facebook, Instagram. They can have a lot of junior soldiers to join them. And they use, at the first time, some of the people from military, they will provide trivial paperwork. And the first handover, those hands might be even shake. But after a few exchange, the shake hand becomes stable and the payment increase. Also, the document become more sensitive or more secret involved in. The second reason is for this, those kind of spy, they will make the spot to the line and the line spread to the web. So they use this way to deliver a message, which is surrender, we already infiltrate over you. For second reason is the POA timetable after just in 2027. It's very closer. So every single piece of information is a preparation for the war plan. They will use this to reduce the cost of invasion. For the third reason is people always weak lack of awareness of national security. For example, in my court, a lot of defendants, they are saying it's only a small and unimportant document, so we can leak out. That is why infiltration succeed in recently. And for CCP's perspective, there's a business with no cost. For example, you can imagine if a spy is caught by KMT, the opposition party, people will say it's a political persecution. On the other side, when we find a spy in DPP, the ruling party, people will say, oh, DPP is a fake anti-CCP party. So in either case, the society becomes divided, so it's easy to manipulate by the CCP. And when we take a closer to some cases, we can find that in the past, a lot of espionage cases involved with colonel or general, and they will attempt by a large amount of money in exchange for some confidential document. However, the CCP switched the target to the junior soldier. Those people, they have low pay, and some of them have the pressure of gambling, or some have the family pressure. So they are very easy to buy. For those people, the CCP may even seduce those people to sign a surrender agreement or the video. There have two meanings. The first is people will use this as a threat for those people to provide more document. For the second is they will also make a deal for those soldiers to do nothing during the wartime. Sounds like very chilling because they don't have any evidence for you for the investigation to catch. Besides for the military infiltration, also in society, we found that there's a lot of the CCP agents, they use the fake name of Japanese academic institution. So last things, the paper from expert, and they use this connection to lure them to provide more confidential document for money. And this is not only confined to Taiwan, because everyone know recently the White House received the fake, the epic time, the threatening letter. So I think that this case will be increasingly more in the future. So we should realize the purpose is to create distrust or intimidate. So a lot of organizations seemingly innocent in Taiwan and not confined to Taiwan, they will use the people, those organizations to mobilize or surveillance or even intimidate. So that's the trend in the future. And also, I also describe Taiwan as a ship. You can imagine some people in Taiwan, I made a metaphor, which is the president is like the captain, and the legislator are like a crew, and the people are like a passenger. And some people want to sail toward China. Some people want to sail toward the US. And some people in July and August are trying to switch the crew, even though they fail. And in the moment, people still fight on the deck, and the criticized president make a lot of people starving. But in my perspective, I think the CCP still send a lot of spy. They just digging on the hull of the ship. If we cannot plug the ship will sink. And there are at least two disadvantages for Taiwan and the world. The first is that will totally reduce the cost of invasion. The second is if cannot stop the leaking from Taiwan, it will endanger the entire Indo-Pacific. So we should figure out something to do. And beyond the infiltration for the society, we also found a lot of so-called lawfare or political warfare. The most successful law is anti-secession law. Everyone knows there's three conditions. The one is if Taiwan declare of independence. The second is when Taiwan experiences internal turmoil. The third is peaceful unification is become impossible. We all know for the first and the second is relatively irrelevant because Taiwan already become a sovereign state. It's no need to declare of independence. Also, I have a statement from President William Lai of Taiwan. And for the second, I think Taiwan is a mature democracy. People will use their resilience to stop internal turmoil, except legislative yuan. I'm just kidding. For the third, I think that's most important, which is who do you think who can decide there's impossible for peaceful unification? Is it the US, the Japan, or Taiwan? None of them. Only the CCP or Xi Jinping can decide when is the time to use the force against Taiwan. So that's quite important. So I would say if some people in Taiwan who support to sign a peaceful agreement should also support for national defense. Because only if we have a lot of bargaining chips, then we can have the negotiation power to have a kind of Beijing dialogue. So in this time, Taiwan should unify together. So go back to my thing. I think Taiwan can become a contributor for two things, at least. The first is for consciousness, for the national security. For example, when I has some exchange experience with European expert, we are talking about the MOU to empower Chinese police to enforce in Hungary. And the expert reassured me, they only catch the Chinese or terrorists. I was surprised and I respond, who can you think who can define who is terrorist? Even more, who is Chinese? So if we don't have those kind of awareness, that will be danger. For second is for institution. Taiwan just established the National Security Corps last September. It is different from foreign intelligence surveillance corps in the US. They only empower the judge to deny or approve the government operation. For Taiwan's court, they can deal the case related to national security. So that can increasingly enhance the learning curve for the judge. We can prepare more fighters in the battlefield, kind of warfare. However, Taiwan still have some blind spot for democracy. For example, we lack of the Foreign Agent Registration Act, which can make a politician and a media outlet to disclose their finding source. That's very important because that make a citizen have the right to know and the right to choice. However, some of the politicians who is for China, they are still manipulate the society just from behind the scene and fueled by red-handed capital. For the second, Taiwan is excluded by the information sharing platform. Like Japan, South Korea, and the US, they do have trilateral intelligence sharing agreement. Even though Taiwan is not a sovereign state under international law, Taiwan should still have more flexible or practical way, such as intelligence sharing MOU, to join the totally global defense web in entire Indo-Pacific. So to conclude, I will provide three policy recommendations, always related to exchange. The first is exchange of people, the second is exchange for intelligence, and exchange of law. For people, it's very important for every people and every people at all level to discuss or even expose the meaning of infiltration. That will increasingly increase the cost of infiltration. For the second, as Louis Brandeis said, the sunlight is always the best disinfectant. So if we discuss more those kind of infiltration or espionage activity, that will make the democracy can defend by themselves. It is also related to my third recommendation. In the past, we always believe democracy can help by itself. However, nowadays, I think it's the time to discuss for defensive democracy. If democracy cannot learn how to fight, democracy will lose by themselves. I think what happened in Taiwan will not only occur in Taiwan, and Taiwan is not alone. And Taiwan's very formative lesson and experience can provide the global defense of democracy a very good experience. Then we can fight together, learn together, and exchange together. Thank you for your attention. That's all of my opinion. I look forward to your guys' opinion as a feedback. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. And you wouldn't expect a judge from US to speak in such a very straightforward, transparent term because systems are different, right? And also there is a testify to the fact that Taiwan is, we talk about the US government, we talk about US public discourse, it's full of hyperbole, and people say, this is really, there is a clear definition, demarcation between public domain, public discourse, which is very intense, and also private space. You have the luxury not to care about what's going on to a larger extent. In Taiwan, however, it's different because Taiwan is a small country and is on front line of fighting against a very aggressive neighbor, And as both of them testify, the kind of it's not a James Bond kind of espionage spies that really is scare Taiwan. It's the softer side. It's the sort of the taking advantage of free and open society. So that's basically the scare, because it's kind of gray. So which brings me to the question of a tension between law and counterintelligence and individual liberty. Every democracy faces that, because openness, transparency is the ultimate strength of a democracy. But openness also is simultaneously the vulnerability of a democracy, because the adversaries can take advantage of that. For example, in the Taiwan case, private ownership of media is a golden rule, but then that opened the door for mainland Chinese capital money to buy the outlets of the news media, and not in turn influence the public opinion, sort of make the society subject to sort of manipulation and infiltration, disinformation campaign. So I say that the first time. I go to Taiwan quite frequently, and it's pretty intense in that ground. So my question for you, Judge Xu, is that as the judge presiding over espionage cases, national security cases, is there a sufficient legal framework in Taiwan that would sort of effectively deal with the issue of soft and subterranean infiltration of Taiwan society by the mainland?
Oh, I would say it's a very complicated question, but it's a good question. I think all the intelligence is like an ecosystem, from the intelligence to the investigation to the judgment on the core and the awareness of the mindset. It will become a circle for whole ecology of the national security. So I will say for the law should be very clear. For example, in the past, people always blame that Taiwan have 2 life sentences for the espionage cases. Can you imagine just in 6 years ago, in 2019, the sentence is equal to thief? It's impossible. I mean, it's incredible. So somehow the law should be changed. For example, FARA is the act Taiwan need to learn. Also the Honest Advertising Act. A lot of fake news, disinformation in Taiwan. We need to deal and face for this issue. That is something for law. For administration, also the awareness is important. A lot of people in the work for government, the civil servants, they will say, oh, maybe this information is classified. However, already reported by the media. So I think all the civil servants, they should check and evaluate all the document to keep the secret internal of all the department. So the knowledge and the consciousness of national security is quite important for administration. Because if we don't have law and we don't have efficient preparation in the bureau, the judicial will lose the mind to make the sentence. So in the end, a lot of espionage activity will enhance a lot, because there's no useful way to control the society. Then the democracy will lose. And a lot of confine for democracy is like a dilemma, because when we face to espionage activity, it's kind of a constraint. However, the mean of democracy is freedom. You should not constrain so much. So the awareness is most important. If every people in Taiwan, also in the US, if people don't have any awareness of national security, people will say, oh, everything is nothing. Then the CCP will take advantage to infiltrate a lot. So that's my opinion. The awareness is the first step. So, and we also need the law and the administration efficiently, and also the judge. I agree. Some of the judge, they just sustain as independent. Also for federal judge in the US. Judge don't talk to the public. However, somehow, if you don't cross the line, judge can tell more for the policy and make the whole ecosystem healthy. That's my response.
Yeah, I think judges like you do talk to the public quite a bit, as we can say now. This is actually a very important point, because awareness is important. on the threat from China, I don't think, however, there is a lack of awareness in Taiwan and in the United States. So that's not a problem. We will agree across the aisle that China poses existential threat to American democracy. What I'm worried about is not lack of awareness. I'm talking about the lack of a comprehensive legal frame to deal with the threat. For example, we all know TikTok is harmful to the nation, except the teenagers. But the lawmakers and the policy makers all agree, but we do not have a legal frame strong enough to outright ban that app, right? So it's because of a lot of legal issues. We don't have the similar thing like the 1947 National Security Act that basically restructured the society in the United States, military, education, technology, to focus on one single adversary, that was the Soviet Union. So there's a national security law that's very comprehensive to deal with a lot of things. We don't have that in China. So that's one of the issues that worry me about Taiwan too, similarly. I don't think you have this, it's difficult. And the delicate balance between liberty, freedom of speech in particular, and the counter-espionage necessity. So catching spies and the infiltration. Let me ask Mr. Sampu, both of you lawyers, by the way, you speak in precision. Now in Hong Kong, we say Hong Kong failed in 2020, but long before that, the Chinese Communist Party underground and their underground networks that have controlled the main aspects of Hong Kong's existence. The media, for example, right? Jimmy Lai is probably the only voice of dissent in there, which is kind of odd because Hong Kong was supposed to be a free port. So, and also business elites, all pro-Hong Kong. And of course, the fake legislature is also controlled by the mainland. Hong Kong also, I think the last pillar of an autonomous region that failed probably was the judiciary. So for a long time, Hong Kong's judiciary independence was the pride of Hong Kong. Right? Is an essential part of the British legacy. How does the collapse of judiciary independence, affect what you have seen, say, judiciary independence in Taiwan? I know, of course, provided that, I would add that I think the judiciary independence in Taiwan is highly recognized and respected. Whatever the court issue a sentence or a judgment is rarely seriously contested because people have the confidence in that judicial system. So can you share a little bit more about Hong Kong's loss of judicial independence?
Yes, I think back in my childhood when I was in Hong Kong, back in the 80s or 90s in the last century, I would see that there are many cases showing that the judges might have an inclination of saying this guy is guilty. But upon evidence showing, they say it's not enough, so it is not guilty. So there are a lot of these cases in Hong Kong, in the colonial rule. After the handover of 1997, what I have heard, and I practiced as a lawyer in Hong Kong at the time, there are so many cases that the judges will have a preemptive conclusion already, and then find the evidence to build the cases. This is the first red signal. There's a failing rule of law regime. That's the first signal. Whenever in America you see that kind of thing, that they have a conclusion first, and they find evidence to pave the way to that conclusion, then that's something wrong. And afterwards, I think in 2020, there's an abrupt changes. The abrupt changes is that it is something Nazi system. Nazi has a special court, and now CCP is an escalated Nazi Germany. What they have done is they have the same court, but with a new bunch of national security lawyers. This is different from KJR because it is in a democratic and rule of law Taiwan. In Hong Kong, these judges are the key persons without jurors, without jury, to adjudicate every cases that has been brought to them, blended as national security. Whether it's under NSL, national security law, or under other subsidiary legislation, they can adjudicate the places. There can be one judge, it can be 3 judges, but these are cherry-picked by somebody. This somebody is hidden in the backyard, okay? And it's hidden, it's not by CE, Chief Executive. It is by some source of forces. And they cherry-pick a few national security judges to adjudicate every cases of national security law and related legislation. Now, I will see these judges ask questions. They are the judge and they are also acting like the prosecutors. They will help the prosecutors to fine-tune the case, pinpoint on the so-called right issue to see what is your charge, how can you defend it. This kind of thing that they will push things to an extreme to ask Jimmy Lai and other political defendants or victims. I see a lot of cases like this. Like the 47 legislators cases, the judges will reinterpret the whole law, every element of incriminating element. They will have a new interpretation, and interpretation means they will cancel out the incriminating element. They do not need to prove it, and it goes straight beyond to the end. This is something that they have been doing. And why they are so? I think they are normal judges. These national security judges are not only for national security cases. They can be for civil and commercial cases as well. But whenever there's a national security law case, this will come to them. And there is, except for one defendant, which is adjudicated as not guilty, everyone is guilty. No exception, except that one, okay? And that one is very lucky. I've met him, and then he's having a new life in Hong Kong. But Hong Kong is a large prison when compared with such small prisons. And many people in Hong Kong are now being threatened not to leave Hong Kong. There are certain political figures saying that if you leave Hong Kong, you'll be in the small prison. So you either live in the large prison called Hong Kong, or you'll be caught and then brought into those small prisons. Okay? This is something that is really alarming. In Taiwan, back to the first question that Professor Yu has asked, I think that the Taiwan legislation still has some loopholes that we need to bridge, like I think Justice Xu has already said, there's a kind of lack of Foreign Agency Registration Act in Taiwan. I think this is the lacking point. And also the lack of kind of professional tools to really do the same. It's a new system that we need to bring along. But I think rule of law is so, I'm so proud to be a new Taiwanese, that the rule of law is still very prominent here in Taiwan. You may see some judges may be lacking of some kind of professionalism, but independence is secured, highly secured. Many people challenge whether Taiwan judges are not independent. I don't think so. I think Taiwan judges are fully independent. It's unlike those Hong Kong judges because it is similar to 政法委. It's similar to the political faction of the CCP in thinking about things. I would see that the CCP 政法委, this kind of infiltration into Hong Kong justice has begun a long time ago. Because whenever they cherry pick some judges and promote some judges to higher courts, they pick such politically red judges or politically acceptable judges that they promote them to the higher courts. When you are really pro-democracy, then you will be always in the lower court, okay? But lower court is not the end of the story because it's for lifelong. It's a tenure for all judges in Hong Kong. They wear the wigs, right? So they are for tenure. But the point is, how can break them through? They use this national security judge system to really break through everything. So I know some judges which are really having a pure heart, and they really want to fight for liberty and also rule of law. They are not in that band. They will not touch upon national security cases. And they can only use their limited power, not to say it loud, but to do it right to prove that this defendant is not guilty. That's it. And then writing a reason to ban this, to avoid upper court scrutiny. That's how they are doing now. So if you ask me if it runs down to zero, I think it's not zero, but it's to a very minimal, barely breathable kind of situation. That's my point.
Okay, Judge, you want to add?
Oh yeah, let me add up here for Taiwan's condition. I think the most critical question is how to balance the human right protections and the regulation. I also agree, Miles, for the legal framework. It's very tough. It should be like a surgery, like a doctor. You should draw a line very clear to maintain simultaneously to maintain the human right protection and also have a regulation to fight with infiltration. And furthermore, we can also consider about counterintelligence. For we always stay in the passive way in almost every field for democracy. So I also think it's a time for Taiwan to discuss with their ally more for the like a counterintelligence and the legal framework together. And also in the promise is to protect the human right. Yeah. So that's my opinion.
Yeah. So this is very interesting because recently, you know, there's a TikTok case in the United States. Precisely because of a lack of a comprehensive national security law, it's very hard for U.S. government to even ban that app, as I mentioned earlier. However, you know, TikTok appealed the congressional act banning TikTok, so they sent the case to the district appeals court. Appeals court say no, reject the TikTok's legal effort, and then they appeal to Supreme Court. Supreme Court reject that too because both courts found out some kind of a very interesting law that's rarely used because there is a law called Code of Federal Regulations, which is basically executive branch's compilation of all U.S. laws that the executive branch must follow. So in that Code of Federal Regulations, the U.S. government designated 6 or 7 of U.S. adversaries. It's very important, adversaries. So that would include China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, Cuba, and Venezuela. So, and the court's argument is that if TikTok is controlled by a foreign adversary, that app, TikTok, should not enjoy the First Amendment protection. So that's the law over there. I noticed that for the first time, the Taiwanese president designated China, not very strongly, as an adversary, foreign adversary, which caused a major political debate within Taiwan. So I hope that will become more aware in Taiwan because China is your adversary in every way of the word. However, I don't think there's enough definition on China being an adversary. If that's the case, therefore, it will probably make your job much.
I'll lose my job. Yeah.
That's right. So it's very important to have that. So I think we have actually we don't have much time for
maybe 10 minutes, right?
Okay, let's just explain. So I will just end here. We'll maybe see if the audience have some questions. A couple questions. Yes, over there.
Hi, my name is Mark. I'm from United Daily News. We're based in Taiwan. I just want to assure everyone that we're not CCP backed. And if we are, without my knowledge, I would like to ask CCP to give me a raise. That's a joke, of course. Going back to my question, with Chinese lawfare against Taiwan, I mean, what we're seeing right now is not just limited to United Nations UN 2758 resolution. Along with the military parade happened recently, with China or CCP also claimed legitimate ownership of Taiwan through Cairo Declaration. And we are seeing that US State Department and AIT kind of pushes that back with stating that Cairo Declaration and even San Francisco Treaty do not determine the political status of Taiwan. I'm just wondering, how can we fight back the Chinese narrative on this? And yeah, because since the panelists are great lawyers, maybe we can have a...
Are you talking specifically, just clarify, about the resolution 2758 or?
No, we're talking about the lawfare.
Lawfare, okay, yeah, okay.
Yes, we always stand in a relatively passive situation. So I think somehow Taiwan and its allies should take a lead in the narrative. For example, I have a suggestion last summer, which is some experts talk about this, which is maybe Taiwan and its allies should become active. For example, you can have a statement such as, if the CCP invade Taiwan, then Taiwan's ally would deny the one China policy, or make the one China policy undecided, such as that. Then as a deterrent for the CCP to fear to use the force against Taiwan. So that's one example. We still have a lot of narrative we can explain in many fields. So should be team up and have a strategy to, but also we should also consider if we have more, to do things more aggressive, like we'll have like a disadvantage, because maybe the only CCP to speak aloud, but it's not reasonable. So somehow we should balance also for this in the narrative field.
Yes, coming to your question about lawfare, that's very important. I recently know that the Department of Defense of US has been changing the name to Department of War, okay? You have just, the reason is not just about the tradition itself, it's about, you need to be thinking about defensive and offensive, okay? Reactive and proactive. I think in terms of lawfare, I think Taiwan should be more proactive than reactive. There's no war that you can only treat it within Taiwan, this defensive. So you need to say that we need to assert very clearly that you are wrong. When we see that CCP has some very false propaganda, we need to, at the first moment, tell them that you are wrong and tell them why they are wrong. For example, when you talk about the Cairo Declaration and San Francisco Treaty, it's very clear that declaration is a declaration, treaty is a treaty. It's simple. So treaty means international obligations. And what's left here that is open for discussion and controversy about the situation of Taiwan. I think it is very important that we should regard Republic of China, that is Taiwan, as the sovereign country. And I think this is the de facto state that's happening here. And as Taiwanese, I think that we should bring this idea right and aloud to everyone in the States to make sure that people know. Whether this will be a next future is another question, open for discussion. But the thing is, whether we regard ourselves as a country citizen or as no country, nobody, as somebody very strange, having no country, no statehood at all. I think we will be very clear that we are belonging to the same country. And the current name of this country is called Republic of China. Okay, we need to admit this very important fact. And with that fact, we can have different way of thinking about what should be headed in the future.
Yeah.
But the point is, nowadays, in the States, how this statehood, our kind of recognition, can be brought to the States and to make sure the States will recognize, okay, ourselves as a very strong country. I think that's important. In my own view, admission of UN or any other new international organizations is important. But the more important thing is that how US relationship with Taiwan, Japan relationship with Taiwan, and even ASEAN countries' relationship with Taiwan, and also European relationship with Taiwan can come into play in a de facto effective manner, which means to help us as Taiwanese to really build our own identity and also our own advantage and sell Taiwan to the whole world. And amidst all these kind of political scandals or ecstasy, what we see is that Taiwan is stepping up throughout these 2 decades as a more convincing country, regardless of how you treat declaration or how you treat treaty. Open your eyes and you will see that there is a country having a national flag in Taiwan, and people need to have visas or passports to come to a country, which is not China visas. Chinese cannot come to, mainland Chinese cannot come to Taiwan with their own passport. Well, even if a passport, they cannot come here. They need a special permit, right? So this is something we need to be made very clear to everyone, that respect the reality, admit the reality, and move on. That's what I say.
One China policy, the very phrase itself is very misleading. It may imply to some people that it's not just about whether there's one China or not. There is one China, obviously, but whether that one China includes Taiwan or not. So there's different interpretation of that, right? So anybody who live in China and in Taiwan would tell you, yes, definitely there is one China, which is very different from Taiwan. So, and they're two completely different societies, a completely different kind of ethos of government and society. So therefore, we should not, it's hard to get rid of a one China phrase, we can still say there's a one China policy, but also we may need another one called one Taiwan policy, because they're totally different entities.
Yeah,
so one true. China policy, yes, but there's also one Taiwan policy. So that's basically it's like, we cannot say, anyway, so I'll end there, and I think the phrase, Chinese play this conceptual game to hook you into their framework of reference, and so one China policy is different. United States' ultimate bottom line in the China-Taiwan situation is that we resolutely oppose to any side to use force to change the status quo. That has been a policy since the 1950s. Now let me ask you, what is status quo? Status quo is independent sovereign Taiwan, pure and simple. So the question really boils down to whether you have the political courage to recognize the reality, the status quo. So that's one reason why those growing voices in Washington to recognize the reality is not to create a new nation that has not existed. It's just to force the world to recognize the independent and sovereign reality of Taiwan as a nation, which is totally different from mainland China. So that's one issue. So I think that's the issue that we should address. Okay, anyway, another question. There.
My name is Stan Kratkowski. I'm an independent journalist and a human rights researcher. I have a question to the three of you. Looking at the raising level of infiltration by communist China, not only in Taiwan, but also in the United States, what do you think should be the legal mechanisms to fight against, for example, Chinese media platforms that spread misinformation, disinformation, like not only TikTok, but also in Taiwan, very popular Bilibili or Xiaohongshu, and these platforms, if there are any mechanisms to fight against those platforms under freedom of speech conditions. Thank you.
Let me just answer the question directly, since you asked the United States. It is very important to handle infiltration by adversary against the United States through professional legal court of law. If you, however, bring that issue to the political arena, become a political discourse, it can be very dangerous. So this one is professional. If anyone acts against the interests of the United States on behalf of a foreign government or even adversary government, foreign government, that should be subject to the law. So it's professional job, it's professional counterintelligence operations. Politicians sometimes can take the issue to their forum, and that's important to raise the awareness, right, to advocate for some kind of legal solution. But ultimately, it's the law that should be upheld.
There is foreign agent involved here in the US, unfortunately, not yet.
Yes, I think every country has some sort of that. It's just how to implement that. Somebody mentioned, Judge Xu mentioned about FARA. Also, Sampo mentioned it too. FARA is a very decent and weak order that says that if you are an agent of foreign government, you should declare to the US government to reveal that reality. You're representing a foreign government, and you're required to report to the government, right? Your foreign assets, and so that's it. It's a reporting mechanism. It's more of the transparency requirement rather than a counterintelligence operation.
Yes, I think the power of FARA is this. If without FARA, you need to prove that CCP directs a certain app or certain company to write this kind of word in the web. It's hard to prove all this kind of linkage. But with FARA, you need to prove only two things. One is there's existing a fact that they are spreading misinformation, disinformation, and that this organization is actually a Chinese-owned agent or Chinese-controlled agent. You do not need to prove the factual linkage. So this is very helpful because it's vulnerable to harsh punishment if this organization or this person have not registered himself or itself as FARA. It's a very important thing here.
Yeah, if you're a lawyer in a regular law firm here on K Street, if your client is Chinese government, therefore you're required to report as a FARA agent. So that's pretty simple. But that doesn't mean you, the lawyer, is the agent of Chinese government, but you have to report to that.
Yes.
So in that regard, it's a very minimum requirement. Any sovereign government should exercise that right. Yes, Judge?
Yes, in terms of legal framework to talk about this, I think all the espionage activity, you should prove at least two sections. The section is the first. You should prove the connection between the spy with the CCP. That's the first. The second is you should have to do something. So the new way is they will use the crypto to hide their fund. And also for the second stage, they will do nothing. As I say, if they have an agreement for some soldier, ask them to lay down the arm during the wartime, that will be the problem. So in the future, we face the very difficult condition for this. So FARA is very helpful for the first stage, and we still need to plug the whole of the ship for the second stage.
Yeah, FARA is, in my opinion, not enough at all.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
we should have more. I'll give you one example. One of the very pernicious Chinese practice of lawfare against the United States is that if the Chinese government wants to steal the secret of the very major company in the United States, they normally would spend a lot of money hiring a law firm here in Washington or in New York to sue the US government. The purpose of the Chinese government is not to win the case. They will force you into disclosure, which means with the legal stage where both litigants will be obligated to disclose all their company information. So through that stage of disclosure, the Chinese government and the plaintiff will steal the information from you legally. So now how do you deal with issues like that? Therefore, FARA is not enough at all. You have to have some kind of a really, really advanced, sophisticated, comprehensive national legislature against that. We're dealing with whether China is even qualified as a member of the free trade system. So that goes back to 2001, and you have to really realize the fundamental reality of here is that China is a communist country, and Chinese communism is communism.
Yeah.
So that's really something that go back to the Cold War. So it's a very comprehensive issue. So I'm so glad today we have two experts here with their own life experience and their professional expertise to deal with this issue of communist infiltration. Infiltration is not a scare word. It's a reality. So hopefully through forums like this, we'll enhance not only our understanding, but also our advocacy for a stronger, more robust and national security law against such a infiltration, both within the United States and also to help friends and allies such as Taiwan. Thank you very much, and good afternoon.